Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com, and I want to start today by talking to you about a man I know riles most of you up, and so he should. His name is not Joseph Robinette Biden. His name is Dr. Anthony Fauci. Yes, Dr. Fauci has been somewhat absent from the scene over the last couple of months after getting, I think, rightly repudiated for doing more in terms of the media rounds than he's actually been doing in terms of the doctor's rounds. And Fauci's back out in front of the television cameras again now because he has been empowered by the Biden regime to do so. Go out there, champion science, champion data, champion evidence, except we know that Dr. Fauci and his career are such a very long way away from those things. In fact, I want to play you a clip from the weekend shows. You may have missed it because I know so many of you don't bother to tune in to those big corporate Sunday shows anymore. But I think it's imperative that we pay very close attention like the left pays to us and the things that we say to the things that are coming out of the political establishment. Can we roll the clip from Dr. Fauci?
This out there. I want to play some tape here for you and get you to clarify when U.S. taxpayers can expect to get their vaccine.
At least 100 million COVID vaccine shots into the arms of the American people in the first 100 days. 100 million shots in the first 100 days.
You know, the goal that's been set, which I believe is entirely achievable, is to have 100 million people vaccinated in the first 100 days.
Both vaccines?
Primary and boost. Yes.
Primary and boost.
Yeah.
In 100 days.
Yes.
So, Doctor, in that exchange, you seem to be promising a bit more than the president is. Can you just bottom line it? How many people will be fully vaccinated within 100 days?
Yeah, so let me clarify that because there was a little bit of a misunderstanding. What we're talking about is 100 million shots in individuals. So shots, as in other words, when you get down to, let's say, a certain part of the 100 days, at the end of 100 days, you're going to have some people who will have gotten both shots and some will still be on their first shots. What the president is saying, 100 million shots in the arms of people within 100 days.
So reportedly, the transition team projections are that's more like 67 million people by April, by the end of 100 days. Is that an accurate number?
Right. Yeah, that is, well, I haven't done the math myself, but it sounds very much like the accurate.
I haven't done the maths myself, or math, as he says. Haven't done the math on a claim that he's making about what he claims to be one of the most important scientific discoveries and the rollout in the United States of America, the country that all the rest of the world looks to for inspiration and for guidance on this. I haven't done the math. You know for a fact that if that was under a Trump administration or somebody within the Trump administration or Donald Trump himself, this would be leading headlines on CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, everywhere. This would be the clip they keep on playing. The president gets his numbers wrong. By the way, not by an insignificant number. In that clip, Dr. Fauci calls it a little bit of a misunderstanding. Sorry, a little bit of a misunderstanding would be 99 million versus 100 million. A little bit of a misunderstanding is a factor of, 1% or 2%. They're talking about 100 million versus 67 million. This is a factor of, I think, a 49% increase from 67 to 100 million. That is also a 33 million dose difference that they're talking about. 33 million Americans you're talking about. And that's a little bit of a misunderstanding. That's 10% of the country. I haven't done the math myself. This is the person who's been giving interviews now all weekend, big interview, set-piece interview, I think it was in the New York Times, In fact, the New York Times went out of their way to ask him probing, hey, did Trump threaten to fire you? Fauci says, no, actually he didn't. Hey, did Trump, was he angry at you? Fauci says, actually, no, he wasn't. But it was really difficult to work there. It was really hard and difficult. And I feel so much better now. The sense of relief that has washed over me since the Biden regime came to power. The Biden regime, by the way, which claimed on the run-up to the election, hey, we have a huge, big, fat COVID plan. We're going to turn the corner on this thing. Turns out, I don't know if you've managed to go through the whole thing yet, ladies and gentlemen, but it turns out if you go through and you look at their entire plan, I happen to have a copy of it here on my device in front of me. If you go through this plan, every single thing is the same as the Trump administration's plan, as the White House coronavirus task force plan. And this is the thing that we've been waiting for. He said we got a plan. It's the same plan. This is gaslighting. This is just lying to people. The plan's the same. Your Fauci isn't doing the math. Oh, but I'll tell you what mathematics Dr. Fauci is really good at. He is really good at his bank balance mathematics. In fact, a report this morning shows that Dr. Fauci is the federal government's highest paid employee. Fact. I'll repeat that. The entire federal government's highest paid employee. Indeed, Dr. Fauci is set to make $2.5 million from his job with the US government by 2024. And that's if he doesn't get a raise. Extraordinary. But he doesn't do the math. We'll be right back after this break. I want to say a great big thank you to everybody out there who visits thenationalpulse.com. We're on track for another record-breaking traffic month to the site, and I think it's in no small part thanks to just the wonderful talent we have writing there, but also to the audience out there who is constantly clicking, sharing, visiting the site day in, day out. We have just a wealth of stories that the media does not cover, the corporate media does not cover. And we make sure that we link back to sources. You can read all the source materials yourself. We just do not invent sources like the Washington Post and the New York Times and all of these guys do. Everything we do, and you can hold us to account on this as well, everything we do is fact-based and evidence-based, unlike Dr. Fauci's calculations. In fact, I would hazard a guess, and I'm not very good at maths, but I would hazard a guess that I do more accurate maths than Dr. Fauci does. Just saying. Apart from the bank balance side, on that he's way ahead of me, leagues ahead of me. I want to get into some other breaking stories that we've got up at the National Pulse right now as well. Bring in Natalie Winters, who's been breaking a lot of this news this morning. Natalie, talking about the maths, or rather the receipts in this case, Mayor Giuliani is throwing down against Dominion voting systems after being threatened with a $1.3 billion lawsuit. He calls that an act of intimidation, but he seems to be welcoming the lawsuit.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Dominion's acting like these claims that their services aren't secure, aren't legitimate, are coming out of nowhere and are baseless. But when you look years prior, a host of attorney generals and secretary of state's offices from states, including Texas, and there's a lot more that we have up at the National Pulse, they've hired people to conduct independent reports on Dominion systems, audit their systems prior to the 2020 election, and they found a host of complaints with Dominion systems. So for them to be acting as if Mayor Giuliani's claims about their products are totally off base or random is an interesting allegation on their part. And
I note that I think you reported as well last month that Dominion's employees are 96% Democrats in terms of the money that they donate to a political party. That'll all come out in discovery and in any potential lawsuit. The really fascinating thing to me, and we're going to have another story up on the site later on about this. Don't worry, Natalie, you're not working on this one. I got this one. About the language that keeps getting used by the left when they talk about the election fraud cases and all that. They keep using the phrase, the big lie, right? The big lie was actually, it came from Mein Kampf. They are quoting Adolf Hitler to smear their enemies. I don't think they understand that they're doing that. I think they think it's like it's accusing the other side of being Goebbels, but actually the quote is from Mein Kampf. Now, all these very intelligent reporters and very intelligent left-wing politicians, again, I probably don't actually know that historical fact, but it's interesting to me because Dominion used it in their letter to Mayor Giuliani as well. It says, just as Giuliani and his allies intended, the big lie went viral on social media as people tweeted, retweeted and raged that Dominion had stolen their votes. The big lie is a phrase straight out of Mein Kampf. It does not look good, Dominion voting systems, for you to be quoting Adolf Hitler, especially a quote from Adolf Hitler that was used to attack Jewish Germans for the failure of Germany. I digress. It's just weird to me that everybody's using this term, the big lie. Nobody really knows where it's coming from. Natalie, what else have we got on the site right now?
So much is breaking, a lot of China-focused stories. Actually, today was a pretty Fauci-heavy day. We also had a story. There was a report coming from Steve Hilton on how Fauci had written op-eds defending the gain-of-function research, which essentially modifies certain genomes so they can be transmissible to humans. This is the kind of man-made virus, that theory that you talk about coming from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and specifically how Fauci funded these studies even after the Obama administration had moved to put a ban on this research. And I think a buried lead from that story, which we pulled out, was that after the Fox team had reached out to the National Institutes of Health and the EcoHealth Alliance, which, if you remember from a few months back, there was a 60-minute segment where the president of that organization attacked President Trump for his conduct with regards to coronavirus. Well, and also I'd add, we found a few months back, too, that he donated over 13 times to Hillary Clinton's campaign in less than 2 months. But when they reached out for comment, they abruptly pulled down this study that really created a similar, I believe the quote was, a doorway for human transmission that you're seeing with COVID-19, also concerning trade. For the first time ever, China has surpassed the United States as the top destination for foreign direct investment in 2020. According to UN figures, the United States saw a 49% decrease, whereas China, basically the only country that seems to be doing okay, at least according to their numbers, during the pandemic, they saw a 4% increase. A lot of outlets were really concerned about this, but I would also say that the majority of our foreign direct investment into the United States actually comes from China. So in some ways, I think that there's a silver lining to this, because obviously that money has strings attached. If you remember, notoriously Mayor Bowser created the Wharf District in D.C. With Chinese Communist Party linked money coming through foreign direct investment. And under the Biden and Obama administration, you saw this process increase exponentially, thus allowing the Chinese Communist Party to really extend their hand over American real estate, American critical infrastructure. That's
the silver lining for the establishment, by the way.
Yeah.
Not the silver lining for American workers and influx of American jobs here. Natalie, finally, I just want to get to the hypocrisy of the Washington Post and Amazon. Walk us through this.
Sure. So I believe on Sunday, Alabama Amazon facility, they were having a vote on whether or not they should form a union. And interestingly enough, Amazon, whose owner Jeff Bezos also owns the Washington Post, an outlet which basically every day seemed to issue a fact check on President Trump and his claims that mail-in ballots were rife with fraud. A statement from an Amazon spokesperson said, quote, "The best approach to a valid, fair, and successful election is one that is conducted manually in person, making it easy for associates to verify and cast their vote in close proximity to their workplace." They continued to say that mail-in voting systems, quote, "disenfranchise those who vote." So definitely a bit of, actually a major amount of hypocrisy concerning the way elections should be conducted for Amazon workers in comparison to the United States.
Extraordinary. So mail-in voting doesn't work. Gain of function is real, and Fauci was behind it. Gosh, I do tire of being correct years in advance of the establishment media. Natalie Winters, thanks so much for updating us on those breaking stories over at thenationalpulse.com. Go check them out in the break. Share them around. That's your job. Who else is going to do it? We'll see you after the break. Well, in addition to a battle for the nation, of course, there is a battle for the soul of the Republican Party that's taking place right now, a battle that must be won by Trumpists, Trumpers, Trumpism, and it's a battle that people are picking sides on very, very quickly. People who you thought were on your side 1 minute can be totally against you the next. That was the case for Alyssa Farah. She was the Deputy Communications Director in the Trump White House until she wasn't, after what I am told is a very enjoyable night at the Bombay Club. Those of you who know what I'm talking about will know what I'm talking about. But Alyssa Farah went on CNN in the following weeks to trash the president and his claims of election fraud, to trash John Eastman, to trash Rudy Giuliani, to trash everything that we've been saying and working on, presenting receipts and reports and statistics. And PhDs have been working on this for so long, ever since the day after the election. But Alyssa Farah knows better, right? So she goes on there and she goes on to CNN and she's talking about how the party must move away. And then she writes an op-ed for Real Clear Politics, another kind of house magazine of Washington, D.C. I won't say Real Clear Politics is particularly left or even particularly pro-establishment, but it just is D.C. in a website, right? So I want to bring Liz Harrington on because Liz has worked in and around conservative circles in Washington, D.C. for a very long time, has worked at the RNC, is not shy of stating her opinion. And I think on this one, her opinion is something that we all need to pay very close attention to. Let's bring in Liz Harrington. Liz, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Raheem. Thanks for having me.
So, Liz, you wrote us an article over at the National Pulse. We published it this weekend. It's called Trumpism Needs Trump, Not Guidance from Grifters. And grifter is about the worst thing you can be called in Washington, D.C., apart from a friend of Raheem Kassam. So it's strong words. Tell us about it and why you felt compelled to write this.
Well, I'm tired of being lectured by people who take the side of people who steal elections, of people who believe in nothing, of people who lie for a living. And this is, I mean, you hit it on the head here. This wasn't just some nobody, remember the anonymous person in the New York Times. It was like a low-level staffer. This was Kayleigh McEnany's deputy. This is one of the highest people in the comm shop in the White House. And apparently she didn't believe anything about what she was working on. And I'm so tired in this article that she says, where do conservatives go from here? Well, I can tell you, they can go by standing with the people who stand for the truth. They can stop listening to everyone like Alyssa Farah, who continually cedes the argument to big media, to big tech, to everyone who hates our guts and, quite frankly, hates the country that you were supposed to be serving. So where do conservatives go from here? We go what wins, where the path to winning elections is. And that's by telling the truth, having a spine, and standing up for the country. It's pretty simple, and that's why President Trump won the election. He actually was true to his word. He actually had conviction. He fought for the values that Republicans have been talking about for a very long time. They've been doing their cruises for a very long time. They've had their think tanks and they've been writing their articles. Well, what did they ever have to show for it? And finally, we got someone who was there with the receipts, like we like to say, actually had the track record and the result and success, 27 out of 27 toss-up House races, mind you, that we won because of one man, and it was President Trump. And it's very simple to emulate. You just have to have a backbone. You just have to tell the truth, and you just have to fight for what's right. And I'm sick and tired of being lectured by people who cede the moral high ground to liars and thieves.
Liz, you talk about, how simple it is, but actually in Washington, D.C., telling the truth is anti-simple, right? It's complicated because there are always interests bearing down on you. There's always the threat of being excluded from some social scene. There's always some friend of yours that works for a think tank or is in a position of power, a media organization that's, demanding you do something and invoking their friendship as a result of it. And you kind of hint at a lot of those things in your op-ed as well. I mean, Alyssa, I've known Alyssa for 10 years. In fact, she's not even really worth worrying about in and of herself, but it's what she represents in this city that is worth worrying about. And that is people who are more inclined to take the easy way out because their lifestyles improve, their social lives improve, their bank balances improve, etc., in Washington, D.C. as a result. Liz, you and I have been to the same think tank soirees and Christmas drinks receptions and house parties and all of that, and I feel the same as you. This is what Andrew Breitbart said, when he was still alive. He said, I'm done having cocktails with these people. No more cocktails. And you get into this town and it's sexy for a little while and it's free drinks and, you can have a little lobster puff or something like that. But at the same time, you get tired and bored of having the same people, the same conversations, and you realize very quickly they're actually out to achieve nothing. Their job is to achieve nothing because stagnation and selling out the nation are what's lucrative to these people. So Liz, we talk about all of this stuff and really my next question comes down to this. They often invoke, as part of their stagnation policies, the moral high ground, right? Look for our better angels. What does that even mean?
It's meaningless dribble, and we're so tired of it. That's why President Trump, when he came down that escalator, was such a breath of fresh air. He doesn't talk like a normal politician because nobody talks like that. What does that even mean? The entire op-ed, and again, who cares about her, really? It's what this broader picture,
right,
this broader ruling class, which it's been the silver lining of this fraud and this election theft, at least, has shown people...
Liz, we've got to take a quick break. Hang on the line. We've got to take a quick break. I want to ask you about, therefore, we know what the future of the party is not. Well, I'll ask you what the future of the party is, but it's really interesting. I bet you that this op-ed actually got more readers as a result of your article and people who clicked through to read who the heck Alyssa Farah was and what the heck she was talking about. Probably got to the end of a 700-word article and thought, what did I just read? Because it is so hollow. And, they sprinkle in bits here and there, our better angels and character and integrity and all this stuff. We heard it all before. We've heard it from the Lincoln Project, right? The very same Lincoln Project that took $10 million out of their own thing to pay their own companies. The same Lincoln Project that had John Weaver, who's sexting young men. Oops. These are the people we're supposed to follow for integrity and character. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Monday, January the 25th, the year of our Lord 2020. And I want to just read from you this short sentence from the crescendo of Alyssa Farah's Real Clear Politics op-ed. It says, the president should be the moral conscience of the country and embody the high character of our nation. So much nonsense, so much guff in that one sentence. But I do want you to think about it. It does bear thinking about. Should the president be the moral character, conscience of the country? I don't think we're electing Jesus Christ, right? I don't think any leader of any country is elected to be what the religious establishment and what faith and scripture are supposed to do for a human being. And I don't also believe that the high character of the nation can be embodied within a person that is elected if the electoral processes are not fair, that can be elected if the party structures are so rigid and always seek to lock out people rather than include people. And I don't believe also, talk about the high character of the nation. When you have a corrupt culture, a Hollywood, a New York, corrupt cultural scene, then what does it even matter what the high character of the nation is? The high character of the nation isn't reflected anywhere else. So how do you even determine what the high character of the nation is? Let's go to Liz Harrington. Let's bring Liz Harrington back into the conversation here. Liz, this seems like utter gibberish to me.
It is utter gibberish. It makes no sense. But let's just take it. Okay, sure. Let's have the moral consciousness. Well, is that the person who his entire life he used family tragedies to smear other people as a drunk driver to start his political career when it wasn't true? Or, oh, that same guy is a serial plagiarist, the same guy who let twice now, an innocent man get impeached for what he did? The people that steal elections and that take bribes from the Chinese Communist Party and go into business with people who go missing? I mean, read the National Pulse. You can read all about it. These people are corrupt. They don't have any moral high ground to speak of. And you can just go back through history, go back to our past few presidents. Look at their character. Look at the character of Barack Obama. Same thing, so corrupt, lied for a living. These people are not exemplary.
Well, Liz, actually, that's a really good point.
Thing.
Liz, it's a really good point. Look at Barack Obama and what his administration did. Look at George W. Bush. I mean, the high character of the nation was bombing countries to oblivion. Was the high character of the nation getting fellacioed in the Oval Office from Bill Clinton? Was the high character of, I mean, you just go back. I mean, just keep going back. Did John F. Kennedy and his hot tub parties, was that the high character of the nation? You know, this is a ludicrous standard set up by a ludicrous person. So I'm done with it. Let's talk about where the party needs to go. Go ahead, Liz.
It's a ludicrous standard, which I think it's designed to. Let's all talk. We'll just have a nice, empty talk, and everyone can feel good about themselves. Meanwhile, the endless wars continue. Our jobs continue to get shipped overseas, and they say fat, rich, and happy. That's the purpose. I think that's the design of the swamp. But the problem that President Trump really presented is he awakened so many people's minds to it that, oh, well, actually, we can get real change. Actually, we can get back to representative government and have someone restore our economy, our livelihoods, our sovereignty, our borders. That's the solution. So where does the party go from here? It's very simple, I think. Only with people who will admit that this election was stolen from us and get back to fighting for our constitutional republic. Because otherwise it's not going to matter. If we don't fix the election systems, they'll have these nice parties, they'll have these empty words and these op-eds and their cruises, and the gravy train will continue. The country will be gone. And all those people who are offended by a couple of tweets, well, now you're on the side of the people who ban your Twitter account, who censor, just like the Chinese Communist Party does. There's only two sides here. So you really have to make a choice and stand up for the truth, stand up for the country, because otherwise it's going to be gone. And you'll get canceled too. Don't think because you say some nice things on CNN and, oh, if only you condemn President Trump one more time, that they'll finally accept you. They won't.
They're doing, I mean, look, Fox News thought that it could appease the crocodile. They're still going after Fox News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, but we'll pursue that until Murdoch's empire is beaten out of business. That is a fact. You can never appease, you can never compromise, you can never kowtow to the totalitarian political left, and we will absolutely, and believe me, Liz is much more of a warrior than I am. So if you think I can say we will never do that here, but Liz Harrington especially will keep us in check. Liz, I want to thank you for your time today. It's just absolutely amazing op-ed. You can read it up on thenationalpulse.com. I hope there's going to be many more pieces of analysis from you, Liz Harrington, because you've been in this town. You see what it is, and I think between people like you and I, about to start informing the rest of America that doesn't get to go here. I say it like it's a high school because it is like a high school that doesn't get to go here.
It's a bunch of people who are popular in high school, and they're just clinging onto these parties and these circles and this acceptability. Meanwhile, the country is going to a communist hellscape really fast, and we better do something about it. So there's going to be a lot more. And I think what you're doing here at National Pulse, what we're doing at War Room, that's the ground zero of this. We have to get the information out. That's the solution.
Liz, what's your social media?
It's Real Liz USA. Get it before it's gone. They're dwindling. The account is being memory hold as we speak. Right. I also started Gab, Liz Harrington.
Very cool. Go follow Liz on Gab as well. I just passed the 100,000 mark on Gab, and as promised and as pledged, I donated my $1,000. I always say when I pass the first 100,000 mark, I donate $1,000. I donated $1,000 yesterday to the Tunnel to Towers charity, do such great work for 9/11 victims' families, as well as military veterans in this country. If you want to help out, you can find them Tunnel to Towers. It's one of those charities that's very good because they don't spend a lot on buildings and staff salaries and things like that. I think they have an A or A minus on the Charity Navigator. I'll clarify that in the break and update you. But I want to thank all of you who are following on alternative platforms like Clout Hub and Gab. It's incredibly important. Although I will say this, I got my Twitter account back yesterday, and I'm already back up 2,000 followers, which you know what it means. They're going to suspend me again. We'll be right back after this break. So you won't know this as viewers of this show, but in the breaks, which I think, what are they, 2 minutes or 3 minutes? In the breaks, I bring the next guests in, have a little chat, as I like to do. I'm scribbling down here the points that I want to cover, that I need to cover, that I have covered. We're actually tweaking the website right now, thenationalpulse.com, because we're doing so many breaking news stories that it actually didn't make sense to just have the 3 breakings under the leader story. So we just, thanks to Wahagan and the excellent technology that he brings to the site, we now have 6 breaking stories up on the homepage. You can go and check it out now. So we'll be able to bring you more information. You won't lose anything over the course of the day, thankfully. I also start editing articles. Natalie Winters has a great news story that's coming up soon about SolarWinds. You remember this software vendor that's been used by US government departments was recently the target of a massive Russian cyber attack. We actually have exclusive reporting to bring you on that. I'll try and do it immediately after this show. Also setting up my next phone call immediately after the show. I'm chatting to one of our lifetime members. You can join up at thenationalpulse.com/support if you want to bring all of that into your life, which is phone calls with me and Discord private chats and so on and so forth, tweeting out the stories, and also checking on our favorite aggregators like Citizen Free Press and the Bongino Report and all the wonderful sites that are linking in, Populist.press, Rantingly, that are linking into the National Pulse right now. So it's a busy old time. Oh, and I forgot as well, in addition to all of that, site traffic is so wild right now that even the servers are beginning to strain under the increased load. That's the benefit, I guess, of running a site that is breaking news like no other. We really enjoy doing what we do, and we thank you for supporting it. It's also a peril of running an operation on 2 or 3 people because I have to juggle everything. So my apologies if I'm a little bit frazzled when we come back from the breaks and I'm all over the place. But somebody who always brings me just so much calm and soothing into my soul is Patrick Basham. Patrick joins us on the line now. He is just a fantastic writer and has written this excellent op-ed over at the Epoch Times. He's also the founding director of the Democracy Institute, a Washington and London-based politically independent research organization. Basham, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be with you as always.
So, Patrick, this article, I saw it, Natalie read it as well, and we said we have to have Patrick back on the show. Is Trump a 4-letter word? You write for the Epoch Times, demoralizing MAGA voters will sow discord. But Patrick, we're being told by the Biden regime that it's all about unity and we're all together and the country's all united again. Doesn't really feel like it, though.
No, it doesn't, does it? It's hard to unite a country when you tell the world that half the country, that is the half at least that didn't vote for the new regime, are second-class citizens, right? There's 2 things they're trying to do here. One, they're trying to make sure that everyone who supported Biden really views those who supported Trump and continue to support Trump as beyond the pale, as bad people, as immoral people, unethical people. And secondly, once that task is accomplished, which is the easier of the 2, they then want to turn to turning Trump voters against themselves, for them to take on that self-loathing and to view themselves the way that non-Trump voters are hoped to view them. So this is how Trump supporters become, over time, second-class citizens in this country.
So how do we get out of this? I mean, this Biden camp doesn't show any signs of relenting against Trump supporters. In fact, the apparatus of the state we know was very well leveraged under the Obama administration for political ends. I expect no different under the Biden regime. And I expect that conservatives will have no truck with being kind of ameliorated or patted on the head by the political left that seeks to censor them, that calls them names, that I'm getting reports now that people are losing their TSA, pre-check status, and it's only Trump supporters that appear to be reporting such things at the moment. I haven't confirmed it, but I have had several reports of this right now. So how do you get to that when both sides are turning their backs on one another?
There's two things that may make the difference. One is the fact that this denormalization campaign is arguably going to hit a numerical wall. By that I mean Trump left office with a narrow majority of the country approving of his performance. You've got at least 75 million people who voted for him and likely would vote for him again tomorrow. It's very hard, hopefully, to turn at least half the country against themselves and into those second-class citizens. So there is the potential for numerically very significant pushback. The other thing is that we all have to keep banging this drum, informing everyone of what's going on and pointing out how bizarre and perverse this is. I mean, imagine if the Democrats and the media and big tech and everybody was telling the world that all the homosexuals in America were second-class citizens, or all the Jews, or all the African Americans, or all the Hispanics, or all the illegal immigrants, right? I mean, everyone would rightly go crazy, and this campaign would have to end yesterday. It's no different the fact that not all, but the majority of Trump voters are white and male, but plenty of them are female, and plenty of them are black and Hispanic and Jewish, etc., right? And homosexual. So we need to be as explicit as possible so that people appreciate this is really serious and really dangerous stuff.
Yeah, Patrick, I absolutely agree with you. The pushback from the media will be, being a homosexual, being Jewish, being black, those things you're born with those characteristics. Being a Trump supporter is something you can choose and you can choose not to be. And that's what they're trying to do right now by putting people through struggle sessions on television. You saw Rand Paul this weekend actually handled himself incredibly well against Stephanopoulos. You had Madison Cawthorn, who actually crumbled under the pressure from CNN. But these are the struggle sessions, and I expect the media to continue this on. When we come back from the next break, Patrick, I want to ask you the question. Is it not in the media's interest to continue driving this wedge, to continue telling you that Trump supporters are actually different and we shouldn't treat them as the same as the rest of the United States or the rest of humankind, quite frankly? They are aliens as far as the media is concerned. By what mechanism is the media held to account for its low standards and its bad behavior and its targeting of human beings for what they choose in terms of their political life and in very many cases what they choose in terms of their spiritual life? Stick around and stay tuned. Patrick Basham from the Democracy Institute will remain with us here on the National Pulse. And remember, up next after this show is David Brody and the Water Cooler, and then at 5 p.m. will be a very special episode of War Room Pandemic. Stick around. We'll be back for the final segment of this descent. Remember, Donald Trump was a dictator, according to the corporate media. A dictator that signed one executive order in his first 3 days in office. Bill Clinton signed one as well. George Bush did 0 in his first 3 days. Barack Obama, 5. I want to bring Patrick Basham back into the conversation here. Patrick, do you know how many executive orders Joe Biden signed in his first 3 days in office?
We're in double figures, I think. Must be, surely.
You are correct, sir. That would be 19 executive orders. And they've said they plan another, I think, 30 this week alone. So you want to talk about who the dictator is? It's absolutely extraordinary, but that is the way the media deals with these things. We've showed over the course of this program how they deal with Dr. Anthony Fauci at a completely different standard, the way they deal with it. By the way, the United States federal government's #1 paid employee, Dr. Anthony Fauci, seems like he does more mathematics with his accountant than he does with his staff over there at the NIH. But Patrick, I want to ask you this question because you've written this article for the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times is obviously regarded as, an alternative media source to the corporate media. You're on the National Pulse show. You're on Real America's Voice right now. These are the ways that we are trying to kind of disintermediate how the corporate media dominates the conversation. But, it is fair to say that for now, at least, CNN has more viewers than I do. And so does MSNBC. And, Newsmax is doing a good job. And other networks are coming up as well. But for now, they still dominate the national conversation. And for now, they are still driving the wedge between left and right because it's good for business. So how is it possible for the country to unite behind anything if you have the dominant forces that reach people, the dominant information forces that reach people driving that wedge?
Well, in addition to alternative media, as you've outlined, it also is about grassroots, bottom-up populism in this case, pushing back. We have to remember and appreciate that most of this denormalization it comes from insecurity, right? Political insecurity. These characters know that they cannot win a fair fight in electoral terms. At least they certainly fear that they cannot win a fair fight in electoral terms. So they have to rig the system in one form or fashion, which means that everyone needs to push back, push up, push out in any way they can, locally, state level, federally, through all the various media instruments, right? That is what must happen. And we must also be positive. By that I mean, rather than being on the back foot, on the defensive, as they want everyone who isn't for Biden to be, we must begin publicly to ask the question, what is so wrong with being pro-freedom, pro-responsibility, pro-legal immigration, right? Pro-fair trade? What is wrong with these things? In fact, there's nothing but good about them. And we must be proud and confident and aggressive and assertive in promoting those views. We must put those who have, in our opinion, the wrong views on the back foot. After all, their track record is atrocious. Why shouldn't they? In fact, they must be called upon to defend themselves at some point.
Patrick, just before I let you go, let me ask you this question, slightly tangential to all of this that we're talking about right now, but I figured you might have some views on it. There's a lot of chatter about another political party being formulated in this country, not least because of how so many GOP politicians refuse to stand with Trump, Trumpism, Trump supporters, have turned their backs on them, continue to beg for the donations and beg for their votes, but actually when they get into office, don't bother to represent them at all. A lot of naysayers to the idea of that say, hey, if you want the Democrats to have power forever, that's the way to go about it. What say you, Patrick Basham?
Well, history tells us that it's more likely than not to split a vote that otherwise would coalesce behind one candidate, one party, and would give the Democrats an inbuilt advantage. However, should a new party be successful, as some have, in here and in other parts of the world over time, be successful at basically eviscerating one of the existing parties, then you have a new, fresh party that doesn't carry the baggage and has been able to sift out those who are truly on side and those who aren't. So there is an argument, I think, for a new party if there is confidence and there is evidence that that new party really will dominate that side of the spectrum.
It's interesting. I see it kind of opposite in that sense. I mean, I agree. I think that there is a compelling case for at least setting it up, but not to have kind of ubiquity on the political right, but actually to force the Republican Party. And I'll tell you why. You look back at UKIP, right, in the UK Independence Party in the United Kingdom, and everybody said what a waste of time that was, what a wasted vote that was. How it would only split the Conservative vote and allow the Labour Party to run roughshod over the country. But what it did was UKIP actually went around the country specialized targeting places that they knew were more Eurosceptic, that they knew were more inclined to more conservative values, and giving the Conservative Party not just a run for its money in those seats, but often beating them and winning elections in those seats, whether at a local council level or even at the parliamentary level, just a few around the country. And what it did was it forced the Conservative Party to take a long, hard look at itself and become more of a Eurosceptic, pro-Brexit party to bring those people back into the fold. Now, it hasn't lasted, of course, but that's because a type of UKIP hasn't lasted to act as a counterweight to that. But Patrick, in the last sort of 60 seconds that we have here, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's plausible that you could have, if sense prevailed, then you could have two parties on the centre right who in effect regionalise their appeal, right? Their fundraising, their grassroots efforts, their campaigning, their candidates. That could mean that if they both, let's say a Republican Party and an other party, if they did well enough, then once in Congress, for example, they could command a majority. On paper, arithmetically, there's no reason why they shouldn't. Now, when it would get more complicated would be at the presidential level. If you had three viable parties, sure, somebody's going to have to step out for it to be plausible for one side to have any shot.
I think at a presidential level, I mean, the way the presidential elections work, it's kind of unfeasible. But at a local level, it forces the Republican Party to realize, hey, you don't dominate the political right and you don't get to dictate the terms of what being on the political right is. Patrick, we've got to go right at the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us here. Make sure everybody check out the Democracy Institute, Patrick Basham's awesome group. Patrick, what's the web URL for the Democracy Institute?
Simply democracyinstitute.org.
And support their work. Thank you, Patrick Basham, for joining us here today. I wish I had more time. I want to talk about that third-party stuff with you more. Maybe we'll do an extended segment on it tomorrow. Stick around. David Brody and the Water Cooler are up next in the War Room 5.